All right, welcome in everybody. This is going to be episode number 11 of the Monty and Murdy College Football Show. Thank y'all for joining in with us. Got a good week of college football to talk to y'all about. Monty, what's going on, man? What's up?
Another day, another dollar. I say it every week, but another awesome week of college football. We're getting into the thick of it of the season. Obviously, got some upsets here and there. Got some big games to talk about from last week. Got some big games to talk about coming up this week. Like I said, get into the thick of it. Starting to get into those big rivalry games, those big conference games. A lot of implications coming in. Or we're getting to that point now, so a lot of exciting stuff. It's only up from here. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, Monty, we didn't even talk about this off the air, but it's just something that came to mind. Thinking about all the hurricanes stuff like that. I know you're from Tennessee. Do you have any family that's kind of getting affected by all that hurricane stuff that's going through Tennessee or eastern part of Tennessee?
No, luckily everyone's out of Tennessee now. Parents are actually down in Pensacola, Florida, but they actually didn't get hit at all by it. It kind of went up there because they're in the Panhandle, right? But
Yeah,
it kind of went up. It kind of went up like right past them. They sent a picture of like the precipitation map that it was coming up, and it was like this huge storm coming up, and then it was just like little Pensacola, like just to the left of it. So
yeah,
they live on the water on a in a like a bayou, so the water levels were really high. The marshland on their property filled up, but I mean that's pretty typical when the tide's high. So that was the worst of it. But no, everyone's good. All my buddies are good that are still there. Um, Most of them are in Middle Tennessee, so they just got a lot of rain and some wind. But no, there's a lot of people in East Tennessee and the Carolinas and other places being affected by it. So obviously our prayers are out to them
absolutely.
and yeah, but luckily for me, all my people are fine. But yeah, I'm still praying for everybody else over there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we'll go ahead on this. So for this week, we're going to talk about we got our week 5 recap. We're going to re-hit all the games that we predicted for y'all last week. As always, we'll follow that up with the new AP Top 25 poll. We got some exciting new news to hit on there. We'll go in through our week 6 predictions. Man, we're already to week 6.
Yeah.
And then we'll finish up the show with our dubs and duds of the week and Monty's weekly hot take, just kind of how we always do. Samani, you want to just go ahead? Let's dive right in, man. First game off the bat, OU traveled to Auburn, managed to escape there with a win, 27-21. What, did you have any kind of initial thoughts on the game? Anything that you thought watching it?
Uh, well, my first, you know, obviously in the past couple episodes I had talked about, listening to other college football experts podcasts and stuff, and I was listening to a couple of them, and I was thinking about this as I was listening to one of them, and it was just like Oklahoma won that game in the most Brent Venables way that they could have won that game. I mean, it was like when the team needed the defense stepped up and clutched up and ended up winning that game. It was a I mean, y'all ended up coming back, and that's no dig to the offense doing what they did, but it was very apparent that defense was the one that kind of saved y'all's tail at the end there. But I mean, it just shows you how good OU is a good team, and despite obviously all the injuries, I'm sure many people have seen that injury report that came out last week prior to that Auburn game. Um, I mean, you got your starting five. I say starting five, right? Like basketball, you're starting five receivers all out. You're starting a true freshman first road test. I mean, it was very similar to what Nico had against OU, but Nico is Nico, right? And we're finally getting to learn about Hawkins. Um, but man, he was able to step up, and despite all the cards stacked against him, I mean, he's 1-0 on the road in the SEC. So no, those were my initial thoughts. I mean, one thing I noted about Auburn, Coach Hugh Freeze had mentioned that, man, Auburn is actually a pretty good team. It just need to minimize the turnovers, which is completely true. I mean, four picks in that game, and
What
they lost by
the
yeah,
OU
the OU
game?
Auburn game.
No,
Yeah.
they threw one.
Okay. Well, then it was the game before, but
Yeah, game
either way, I
before.
mean,
Yeah,
either way, um, the turnovers are their big problem. And I mean, they still only lost by 6 points, and that was at the end. So,
Yeah, a couple things that stood out to me in this game. I think so. With OU, obviously, you mentioned on it about OU's top 5 wide receivers being out. So with that, the way Auburn started playing defense against this team, starting a true freshman in his first road game. Auburn started to play a lot of cover 0, cover 1, pretty much man-to-man coverage on the outside, saying that, hey, our DBs, we think they can handle y'all, and we're going to stack the box and pretty much dare Michael Hawkins as a true freshman making his first start ever, first start ever, and his first start on the road to beat them without, OU's top 5 wide receivers. And it showed to be a struggle. It really took until the fourth quarter for, Michael Hawkins. He broke that early touchdown run. I think that was what kind of almost galvanized OU's fans' belief in Michael Hawkins. I think he's going to be the guy going forward. And, his stat line's not too anything crazy. He went 10 for 15, 161 yards. But, I mean, he also had.
I mean, that's the one thing you got to consider, right? Like, obviously, I'm not very active on social media when it comes to Oklahoma fans. But, I mean, for me, it's like it's a true freshman, right? So, I mean, it's a very young guy, especially at the quarterback position. I mean, he's going to make mistakes. But he looks really good. As you said, that 10 to 15 for 161. I mean, that's pretty efficient.
Yeah, I mean it's the most OU's averaged as far as yards per attempt or yards per completion this year. So he's getting the ball, pressing it a little more downfield, and what he's able to add on with his legs. The O line looked improved. They finally got their main 5 guys back on the line. They looked a lot better against Auburn. I think the running backs were they're not quite seeing the holes yet, just because, the first 3 or 4 games, they really haven't been there, especially when you're playing a, defensive line like Tennessee's. Holes just weren't there, especially when you're missing starters on that O-line. I think the bye week's going to be huge for this team.
Try to get into the Red River rivalry, too.
Yeah, I think they need it. They need to get healthy. They need to, obviously, do some self-scouting, look at what they do on offense. If teams are going to play them on defense the way Auburn played them, it's really going to boil down to the shots are there. Your receivers got to win one-on-one, and you got to be able to put the ball on them. You got to be able to make them pay for whenever they go into those cover 1, cover 0s, and be able to beat them deep and score fast, pretty much. Beat them over the top. So I think that's part of the issue that's stressing them out. Obviously, with Michael Hawkins, he broke that big run. Auburn was in like a cover 0, and then they went to a cover 1 with a QB spy. After that, it's like so they OU didn't break through for another big play pretty much until the J.J. Hester. I think it was like I don't want to quote it wrong. It was 50, 60-yard pass. Either way, Hawkins hit him on a deep ball. So overall, I think OU showed a lot of good signs. I think the Michael Hawkins, he didn't show a tendency to turn the ball over, which is what you were expecting from him. And OU showed with their defense, if you could just not turn the ball over, you could that defense can keep you in just about every game. I mean, granted, it took a late comeback for OU on this one, having to score 17 points in the fourth quarter.
But they did.
Did.
That's my point, right? And on the road, and Jordan Hare, that's not an easy place to go and win a football game. So, I mean, I think OU's more than fine, more than capable of doing well this year. I mean, you still have a hell of a schedule ahead of you, but man, I think if not this year, definitely next year they'll be able to handle their own more so. But I think it was more. I guess my point is I think it was more impressive win than people might give them credit for, given the circumstances of the roster.
Well, I think that's also. I think Auburn, they're seeing now. They're like, it's a 2-3 football team. It's like, yeah, but that's a pretty good 2-3 football team. Like, they've moved the ball on just about everybody. It's just, coming in, they've had 15 turnovers. They've had a tendency to give the ball away in leaps and bounds. This game they didn't, and it showed with how close they were able to play OU. Peyton Thorne, he only gave up the one turnover. Now, granted, it was the backbreaker in this game,
Mm-hmm.
throwing the one turnover for a pick six by Kip Lewis, which was a great play. I mean, little pretty much a zone blitz bluff. He pulled out of it, came up early, showed, backed out of it. Peyton Thorne never saw him, threw the slant, picked it off, took it all the way to the house. So yeah,
I mean,
really,
it's just poetic, though. I mean, it goes perfectly into what Hugh Freeze said, right? I mean, the turnover literally cost them.
yeah.
I mean, it's just the turnovers for them. So yeah, like you said, 2-3 team that could easily, you could make an argument at least 4-1, maybe even 5-0. They've had 5 straight home games.
Yeah.
This was the stretch. This was the stretch that if they wanted to go bowling this year, they had to go 5-0. And they could turn it around. I don't see it happening, but
They
they
got a big
could
one
turn
this
around.
week. Got
Yeah,
a big one this week against Georgia.
And if I'm not mistaken, on the road too, in between the hedges. So no, I mean you could make the argument for Auburn though. It's just because if you see all the games that they played, they've been right there.
Mm-hmm. Even with the turnover problem, they've still been in them.
You take exactly, and you take this game right. Without the turnover, they win. Okay. And then the Arkansas game without the turnovers, so that's 4-1 right there. And I think Auburn is a better 2-3 team than people give it credit for. But nonetheless, they are 2-3, and they got another SEC team with a hell of a schedule ahead of them.
Yeah, a lot of young playmakers on that Auburn team. So we'll go ahead and roll on to the next game. Oklahoma State versus Kansas State. Man, we got this one wrong. Kansas State beat the crap out of Oklahoma State, winning 42-20. What notes did you have for this one while you were watching it?
I'm gonna stop betting against K-State for now on. That's one thing I'm gonna stop doing. I also, watching that game, I want to say that I don't think Oklahoma State is what everyone kind of thought they were going to be. I'm one of the guilty ones as well. I said that they were going to be one of those, top Big 12 teams. I still think they're, top half of the Big 12 this year, definitely. But you're sitting at 3-2 and trying to still talk about, Big 12 championship. That it's just with what the Big 12 is this year. I just don't see it for them anymore. With that being said, K-State is definitely one of those players in the Big 12 that can be there at the end, barring an undefeated season from BYU and Iowa State, which we'll talk about them later. No, Ollie Gordon was fun to watch in the first half. He kind of got it going there. And that's, I thought maybe that if they could sustain what Ollie Gordon was doing in the first half, man, I thought Oklahoma State might have been able to run away with it. But, looking at kind of the same thing with Auburn, but it hasn't really necessarily been a season issue for him, but similarly to the Auburn football program for this game, 3 turnovers for Oklahoma State, fumble lost, and Alan Bowman with 2 interceptions. It points off turnover. Like, it was all bad, and especially, second, third quarter for Oklahoma State was kind of when Kansas State kind of took control of the game. But we've been talking about it for the past couple of weeks with Avery Johnson, man. When he has a good game, the whole team has a good game. 559 yards, right? But 559 total yards on offense for K-State. 259 passing for Avery Johnson, but then 300 on the ground. That's going to win football games, and that's going to possibly win a conference championship if you keep doing that. So Avery Johnson continues to trend up. He just like you for people not watching, you made the hand gesture of him going up and down, up and down. If he can continue to trend only up and not have any of those lows, K-State's going to be a team to look out for in the Big 12.
Yeah, man, I thought I don't know what ended up happening with Ollie Gordon. I don't know if they it's just kind of like he was really initial part of that game plan, and then he just kind of fell out of it as they kind of went on through. Alan Bowman, he looked really comfortable through the first quarter and a half, but he fell off. They threw that little flea flicker touchdown pass, and
Yeah.
after that, it looked like two different Alan Bowmans were playing. Now Oklahoma State fans are calling for his job. I don't think maybe
Gundy?
no, not Gundy. Bowman.
Oh, Bowman. I was gonna say I doubt Oklahoma State fans are calling for Gundy's
Yeah.
job, man. They love that dude. I love that dude.
Yeah. I think if anybody's he's got some of the best job security probably in college football.
Yeah, he's definitely up there.
But yeah, Kansas State. I mean, we kind of talked about it last week when we were predicting this game. Man, this almost felt like a Big 12 with how good the rest of the Big 12 was playing. Now, granted, Utah did lose to Arizona. So with that, that loss coming into, it doesn't make this a de facto elimination game, but it felt like an elimination game. Kind of where, hey, who's going to be one of those top two teams playing for that Big 12 title? This kind of felt like sums up like maybe Oklahoma State's not going to be that team this year.
I mean, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, they returned so many starters from last year's team. That's why everybody had the faith in them, that they were going to be able to come in and repeat that success. But they've had a real issue on run defense, which, I mean, doesn't really make too much sense. I mean, maybe it's a defensive line issue because they got Nick Martin, who I think is one of the best linebackers in the country, playing linebacker for him. So it'd probably have to be on the defensive line, kind of where their issue in the run game's coming. I think they're just getting knocked back off the ball. Which anytime you're giving up 300 yards is probably the case.
Yeah, if you're giving up 300 yards on the ground, it's going to be tough to win football games unless you're also doing it, right? But, well, I mean, we've been saying it, throughout the whole season and even preseason leading up to the season. Man, the Big 12 is a freaking just chaos, especially with Oklahoma State losing their second game and then Utah turning around and losing at home to Arizona. I mean, it's just like, and then you got your front runners, Iowa State and BYU of all teams. Who BYU people thought weren't going to be anything this year in the Big 12, and then you got Colorado there beating the hell out of UCF. Like they're sitting at 4-1 undefeated in the Big 12. It's like, is Colorado that team? The Big 12, which, I mean, we predicted Big 12 was going to be a lot of fun this year, but the big players kind of, and of course Utah's not out of it, but the big time players that people were projecting to kind of run away with it aren't. So
yeah. So with that, I mean, predicted that one wrong. We can go ahead and move on to our next one. It was Louisville going to play. I did that last week too. Louisville going to play Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish come out of there with a win. Beat them 31-24. What kind of notes did you have?
This one right.
I know I did.
We got this one right.
Did you end up going with Notre Dame? I thought you might have went with Louisville.
No, I went with Notre Dame.
Okay. Yeah, so we got this one right. Notre Dame, Louisville went in there, gave them a game. Still, 430 yards to Notre Dame's 283. Notre Dame, they still can't pass the ball very well. I mean,
that's the thing, though. I think they kind of figured that out.
Yeah, it's a lot of short stuff, but it's enough to get the job done. Especially with Notre Dame's schedule. I mean, it gets a little easier from this point on. Couple things I noted when I was watching this game. It seems Louisville, they slowed down Notre Dame's run game a little bit, was able to impact that. But Louisville just had critical turnovers kind of in this game. Granted, both teams committed 2, but I think Louisville's were kind of in a worse spot for them as far as how the game was playing out. And Notre Dame is just, they gave up. I want to say it was either a special teams or it was a. I'd have to go back and watch the recap on it a little bit, but it was like a early punter malfunction deal. Notre Dame got up on them early 21-7 and pretty much just rode that success all the way to the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's That's why you play the game, right? No, I mean when you look at the stats, obviously outside of the total yards and and all that, I mean it's one of those games that we've had in the past couple of weeks, right? That it just if you were to just look at the stats, you would think, oh yeah, like no score. You'd think, oh yeah, like Louisville won this game. 7 of 17 on third down to Notre Dame's 2 of 10. I mean, 20% on third down. You know, that's not winning football games. You wouldn't think, right?
Normally.
Yeah, right. And then of course you have the fourth down efficiency where Louisville went 1 for 5 to Notre Dame's 2 for 3. So that's a little different there. But yeah, I mean, you know, I think that Notre Dame kind of, I think Marcus Freeman kind of found Riley Leonard's style. I think he's starting to listen to maybe the critics saying, man, let Riley Leonard play his game rather than saying, well, he's going to come in and run this system the way that we run this system. Because, I mean, 17 of 23, 163 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then he was their leading rusher with, 52 yards. But, I mean, as a quarterback, you're carrying the ball 13 times. You're letting the guy run the ball. And he had a touchdown on the ground as well. So, I mean, yes, you can make the argument that, Louisville slowed down the run game and they didn't do this, they didn't do that. But at the same time, Notre Dame scored 31 points and they won 31-24 against a team that at the time was ranked higher than them. So people can say what they want, but Notre Dame's still winning games. And I think with Coach Freeman letting Riley Leonard play his game, he's starting to see that that's going to be their success this season, and they're seeing that. So,
yeah, I think they kind of figured out what they need to do to be successful this year. Like I said, I mean, when we recapped Notre Dame, I guess after their A&M win, right? It was like, hey, who do they have left on the schedule? Right now you're looking at it. It's not a daunting schedule. They got to go.
They still have USC. I think that's going to be their toughest game. Well, and then Navy and Army both turned out to be bigger games for them. So,
well, yeah, they got Navy too.
Yeah,
Army and Navy, which are both 4-0.
That's what I'm saying. I know they played them both. So, those are turning because, I mean, people are talking about that Army-Navy game being a playoff implication game, which I was texting my buddies the other day. I was like, if the Army-Navy game, which the Army-Navy game is always the Army-Navy game, right? The big deal. I was like, if the Army-Navy game is the Army-Navy game on top of playoff implications, I think this whole country might burn.
Yeah.
That'll be an awesome game to watch. But
which, I mean, I don't know if have you ever has Tennessee ever played Army-Navy? Have you ever gotten to witness that?
Nothing I've seen. No, I'm sure I have way back in the day, but
yeah, it's just real difficult when you're going to defend like the little triple option because it's not an offense you see. Yeah. It's not something you prepare for as a defense. So it's like, hey, we got to cram it this week, figure out how to defend it. And there's a lot of keys and a lot of stuff you got to be able to know and pick up on.
That's it in the early 2000s, 2010s. When Georgia Tech was still running the veer, I mean, that's where their success was, is no one knew how to defend it.
Nobody else played it.
Yeah, exactly. Other than the the military schools, but no, I played against it, and I know how freaking difficult it is. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's always fun seeing those teams that run those old school style offices having success. And man, wouldn't it be something to go to Army and Navy going into most likely. I'm going to assume Notre Dame beats them both. We shall see. But going into that game, both 10-1.
Yeah, that would
with some serious playoff implications.
Yeah. I mean, you're sitting there looking at it. It's like, how do you as an American college football, how do you keep one of those teams with one loss out of the playoff?
Yeah, because if they're both 10-1, obviously one's going to win. So.
Yeah. Which, I mean, Notre Dame's shown to be vulnerable. They may very well beat Notre Dame. Who knows? We'll see whenever that comes around. So, next game on the slate, we got Illinois versus Penn State. Penn State ended up winning 21-7. Kind of a more lower scoring game than what I predicted this to be and what I felt like this was going to be.
Yeah,
What'd you think?
this game. I mean, the score I don't think was necessarily indicative of the game. Penn State kind of handled this one. It felt like I know it was 21-7, but I mean, there was never a doubt really when you watched that game. I mean, Penn State's run game was great all night. Um, their defense, I mean, obviously, when you give up only 7 points in a football game against, and I think a good Illinois team, you're doing something right. So, like I said, I don't think the score was indicative of the game. Sorry, I'm pulling up. Give me 1 second. Computer's moving slow.
You're good.
I mean, they weren't throwing for, Penn State wasn't, Drew Aller wasn't throwing for, 300 plus yards, but they were still able to throw the ball. Illinois really didn't have an answer. And actually, with the missed field goals that Penn State had, I mean, this game was, I mean, obviously that's why you play the game, right? You miss field goals, but this game, I mean, it could have easily been 30-7. So,
Yeah.
and that would be more indicative of kind of how the game went on. I think it was like 3 missed field goals for Penn State. So, I mean, when you leave 9 on the board, I mean, and you still win 21-7, you're beating a good team by 14, by 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, I think it was overall a pretty dominant game. At least watching it, that's what it felt like for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think whenever you're thinking about a team like Illinois going in there to play a team that's more talented, I think that's not really a controversial take. Penn State does have more talent than Illinois, and you're going into their environment. If you're going to try to pull off that upset, you got to play clean. You can't have turnovers. You can't. So they ended up committing 2 to Penn State 0, so they were -2 in the turnover margin, and they also had 9
penalties killed them too. They had 9.
Yeah, 9 for 60. So, I mean, whenever you're trying to pull off these upsets, those are your key stats. It's like you need to be able to play clean football, limit their opportunities, and maximize or capitalize on yours. Have good, efficient drives. Make sure, hey, we're getting some kind of points. We're getting field goals. We're getting touchdowns. We're scoring points to be able to keep ourselves within striking distance of this game to get it down to a fourth quarter. Kind of a late shoot game. Give yourself that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the game could have easily been 30-7, which I think would have felt more of like how that game went. But I mean, as a defense, if you're holding somebody to under 200 yards passing, and then you're holding a team to 34 yards on the ground, as an offense, there's not a whole lot you can do there, right? And you can afford to win the game 21-7 from Penn State standpoint. So I think that when you look at that rushing stat, that Penn State's 241 yards on the ground, but Illinois 34. I think that is more of what you look at when you look at this game, not necessarily the score, but nonetheless, Penn State did win 21-7. 4-0. I did note that Illinois is a good team. They're going to be fine. They're just not there yet to be like a Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan for the most part. They're just not quite to that point. With Altmaier, I mean, if they can continue to have QB success and build the roster around that QB and keep a stout defense, I think Illinois could at some point, be that. But right now, I mean, they're definitely not going to go into Happy Valley and win a football game, nor the shoe, nor the big house.
Yeah, just not quite there. I mean, still a good football team. Still can give a lot of teams probably issues, but just not going to be where they're going to be able to go and take down a bigger opponent unless they do play that they do have that kind of upset mentality where they play clean and all that stuff. You can't go in there and commit 2 turnovers and 9 penalties and expect to come out of that football game with a win. So moving on, man, we had the biggest game of the weekend.
Possibly of the year.
Some people are saying, hey, don't worry, this is just the first of 3. We'll see. We can discuss that a little later. But Georgia versus Alabama. Alabama came out with a win. Kaylin DeBoer Actually, beat Kirby Smart 41-34. And man, I'll let you dive into this game. It's kind of crazy, but I'll let you go ahead. Let's get your thoughts on it first.
Well, my first note on the game, let's address the elephant in the room, right? Bama's offense in the first half. I mean, I was coming into this game. I actually did. So you picked Bama. I picked Georgia to win this game.
There it
Man, I
is,
thought,
baby.
yep. I thought, no, I thought Georgia's defense was going to be a big factor in this one. I've always had question marks surrounding Carson Beck, which we'll talk a little bit more about him. But in the first half, he didn't look that good. I've always had questions about him in these kind of games, but Georgia's defense, I mean, they've always been the guys that the team rallies around, and that just was not the case in that first half. I mean, their defense looked like deer in headlights that first half. There was nothing. They had no answer. I mean, literally back to back to back. I mean, it was like they had no answer for Jalen Milroe. They had no answer for Ryan. They had no answer for Kaylin DeBoer's offense. And then on top of that, when Georgia would get the ball back, Carson Beck would just turn the dang thing over. So it was like watching that game, I was like, holy crap, like what is going on? I thought Georgia was the best team in college football. I still think they are one of the best teams in college football. But watching that first half, I was like, Bama's not supposed to be this good.
Yeah.
With it being DeBoer's first year. But Bama was not supposed to be this good.
No.
I was like, as a Tennessee fan, right? I'm like, oh, here we go again. But go ahead.
I was just saying, so just so everybody can kind of keep along, Bama got up 28-0 on Georgia in this game before Georgia 30-7 at half.
Yeah.
Because Alabama ended up scoring that safety after the fact. But they were up 28-0. So, man, I don't think anybody was more surprised by Bama being up 28-0 than Alabama themselves. I think it almost caught them off guard. They were. I didn't expect. It's almost seemed like Georgia almost seemed to come into this half asleep, which I don't know how you can.
Which that's very, very unlike Kirby Smart, right? To have his team not ready.
Coming into a big matchup like this, and coming off of a bye week, from which a game that you did not play very well in against Kentucky, I figured that Georgia would have all the motivation they needed, to come in and, at least I did not see 28-0 coming. Granted, they did battle back in the second half. This game is really the tale of two halves. But, yeah, Jalen Milroe, at least in the first half, it didn't seem like Georgia's defense had any kind of answers. And we can get into the second half. But did you have any more thoughts on the first half?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was just going to, I kind of
Carson
talked
Beck.
about him briefly, yeah, but I said he looked awful. In the first half. 3 turnovers in the first half, I think, for him,
yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. And, like I said, I've had my question marks about him, but I didn't think he ever could stoop that low. I was pretty shocked to see that. And I was, me being an Alabama hater, I was like, man, when is he gonna? And he just wasn't. And, got to, and then finally did towards the end of the first half. And, they got that one touchdown. But yeah, man, I was like, with that between the defense and Carson Beck, man, they just couldn't do anything. And I know I keep saying this about other people, like I said it about Cam Ward last week. I said it about Quinn Ewers a few weeks back. But I mean, Jalen Milroe is definitely, if he wasn't already, definitely is now a serious contender for the Heisman Trophy. I think as the season goes on, we're starting to kind of get Jeanty, right, out of Boise State, Travis Hunter,
that's it.
Jalen Milroe.
I love that
Jalen
dude,
Milroe.
man.
Yeah, me too. I think those kind of the 3 best players, whether they win the Heisman or not. But Jalen Milroe, at least in this game, I was saying when I was watching this game, man, that's like that might have been his Heisman game, right? A lot of season left still, of course, but it was definitely, you could argue, a Heisman performance. Whether he wins it or not, but no, that's all I have on the first half. Second half, obviously, like you said, tale of two halves. totally different story. If we have any Bama fans that listen to the show, they're probably going to hate me when I say this. In the second half, I think we did end up seeing who the better team actually was. And I know Bama fans are going to be like, oh, well, we won, which is right. They did win the game, and so they have that. But I think that if I was a Bama fan, I wouldn't want to play Georgia again. Definitely not in Atlanta or at a neutral site, or in Athens, that's for sure. But Carson Beck was definitely impressive in the second half. I was shocked because I thought, man, especially at the quarterback position, I don't know how you freaking go from that low and to get yourself back into it. But, I mean, 26 threw the ball 50 times in the whole game. 27 to 50, 439, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So, I mean, he turned it around, obviously.
Yeah.
He was actually the one that really got them back in the game. I mean, because you take his stats. They had 80 yards on the ground in the whole game to Alabama's 173. So you take Carson Beck out of that game, which everyone was calling for his head at halftime.
I mean, can you blame him?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, but it's
Yeah.
And you'll come to learn as an SEC fan now. It's always DEFCON 5 with our fan bases. But
Yeah. You blow up first half overreaction. Second half, if you lost the game, somebody needs to be fired for the loss.
Somebody's got to answer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I was saying, if you take him out of that game, I mean, there's no saying this game's not 41-7, 48-7. So, no, he played a really, really good second half, obviously, and got him all the way back. For those who maybe didn't watch the game, probably only heard about it. I mean, Georgia was down 30-7 at halftime. They ended up storming back, and with less than 2 minutes in the game, they went up 34-33. And then I obviously made another note that even still, with all that, Milroe shined when he was supposed to, when he needed to. Turn around, first play of the next drive,
Ryan
they
Williams.
score. They hadn't scored. Yeah, they hadn't scored all half. They got a field goal.
Yeah.
They had 33 points. So they got a field goal in a whole half. So obviously Georgia won the second half by a lot. But when they needed to score a touchdown because they were down, well, actually they didn't even need to score a touchdown. It was 34-33. First play, they turn around, they throw the ball deep to Ryan Williams, 17 years old. I know everyone's been saying that, so I had to say it.
Yeah, get in.
They turn around and they do that. Ryan Williams makes an incredible play. And then they go up and they end up winning the game 41-34. And then Carson Beck throws his third pick. So sorry, I said he had 3 picks in the first half. He had 2.
Yeah.
With one being the game game sealer.
Yeah. Tough one there. One thing I wanted to note is I would be interested to see the blitz percentage and coverage early in the second half for Alabama. Because, I mean, when I'm thinking about it, it's like, hey, what defense? If I was asking you this, right? So say you're a defensive coordinator. What defense do you play when you are up 28-0 in the second quarter on the number 1 team in the country? What defense do you play? Do you go to prevent, or do you do what's been working for you the whole time? How do you handle that mindset?
Broke, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? But that's why I'm not making the defensive coordinator money.
Yeah, I mean, but I was just thinking about, I was like, if I was Alabama's defensive coordinator, it's like, what do I do? You don't want to, say you've been running blitz packages, whatever like that. It's like, you don't want to drop a guy in coverage, or maybe you drop a guy in his zone, he breaks free for a huge play. You don't want to give Georgia that spark. It's like, but you also just don't want to go into a prevent defense and give them everything underneath. So it's like, that's a tough mindset to probably be able to manage for, 2 quarters. Granted, they were able to rise up in the fourth quarter when they needed to, when it's like, hey, Georgia's back in this thing. They're back to the lead. It's like, we need a play. They were able to make that play.
And I think in the second half, going into halftime, Georgia's coaches being Georgia's coaches, right? They were able to do what I think they were planning on doing from the start. Carson Beck didn't have a whole lot of time in that first half, but I mean, Bama's weakness is their secondary, and so they started attacking that secondary in the second half. I mean, I think in that whole game, if I remember correctly, Georgia threw either 20 plus or 30 plus yards 17 times. They completed 5 or 6. So if you're throwing that deep 17 times a ball game, you're trying to
get back.
You're trying to you see something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and then obviously it did end up working in the second half, like I said. But yeah, I mean, going off what you're saying about what defense you're, like I said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they weren't attacking the outside. Georgia wasn't in the first half, and then they ended up doing so, and so that ended up working for the most part up until the very end. But
yeah, still potential more matchups for these two teams. This might not be the last one. We'll see kind of how the rest of the season plays out. We can go ahead and roll on. We got our new AP Top 25 poll. Couple big things. We got a new number 1, Alabama, the new number 1 team in the country, jumping Texas. I'll save the number 4 team for you if you want to go ahead and announce that.
Yeah, obviously Tennessee winning the bye week, right?
Winning the bye, baby.
with Georgia falling to Alabama, Georgia goes from 2 to 5, which that's even with a loss, I think that's the right spot for them. Tennessee moves up to 4. Obviously, that's a big deal for us. Haven't been there since 2022. I had some other notes. I said UGA is in the right spot. I'll talk about this game briefly because I wanted to talk about them. I said I was starting to buy into him last week. I'm out again. Miami. The second that I say that I'm in, they turn around and I mean that Virginia Tech game, and I have a note about that specific ending late once we get to the end of the episode. But yeah, Miami, they dropped 1 spot to 8. I don't know about them anymore. I'm not going to buy in on them. We'll see what happens when they get to the end of the season. But I still got them as the ACC favorite, but I just don't know about them. So I'm going to say I'm still out on Miami. Pay attention, Iowa State slowly creeping up. They're up 2 spots to 16.
Hot takes looking better and better.
They're quietly moving up the ranks. No one wants to talk about them except for Josh Pate and I, but they're slowly moving in. 2 spots to 16. BYU, the other contender in the Big 12, that's creeping up 5 to 17. Utah, who was the favorite, lost to Arizona at home, down 8 to 18. What were you gonna say?
Oh, nothing. I was just saying, if Iowa State ends up winning it, we got to try to promote that post that you had at the very, the hot take at the very beginning of Iowa State winning the Big 12, because I think you were maybe standing alone on top of that hill.
Yeah, look, I told you off air prior to the episode, man. It was a do or die year for Campbell. The hot seat Campbell hot seat rumor was gaining some ground last year from Iowa State fans, and so I mean, if he would, with Oklahoma and Texas being gone out of the Big 12 this year, I think it was a big year. He needed a big year for Iowa State this year, and they got a good roster, really good defense, scary defense, and so I think that's kind of what elevated, and between having a good quarterback in Rocco Beck, a game manager too, which who does that sound like? Brock Purdy, who went to Iowa State, who was a runner-up, lost to the Big 12 championship a few years back with Brock Purdy at the helm. So it looks very similar to that year. So that's kind of why I went off on that limb, and it's starting to kind of look like it might go that way. That's still a tall ask for Iowa State, but yeah. Anyways, and then Boise State and UNLV make their first appearance in the top 25, which is exciting. UNLV with Sluka gone, and I feel bad because I don't remember the guy's name, the quarterback that stepped in, but he had hell of a game, and they smoked Fresno State.
Yeah, we'll touch on that one a little bit later here too. But do we refer to, is Boise State still a G5 team? Or we're still calling them that for this year?
They are, yeah, because they're 2026, I believe, is when they go to the Pac-12.
But is that still? Yeah. Is the Pac-12 going to be a power conference at that point? Are we still? We'll talk about. That's some good off-season talk. We'll save that for y'all.
Yeah.
All right. So looking pretty good. Our records. I'm 30
Yeah,
and 12. You're 28
I
and
got
14.
28 and 14. Yep.
We're both sitting around roughly around that 70% mark. We seem to hover right around that 70. It's where we've been pretty much all season. Not
Yeah.
too much above 70%, not too much below it. So let's go ahead and dive into our predictions this week. We got a big matchup. Tennessee going to Fayetteville, Arkansas, take on the Hogs. Who you got in this one?
Yeah. So this is a big one. I was talking to you again off air about this. It definitely can be a trap game for Tennessee. I think it's looking like it's going to be a sold out game in Arkansas. It's a night game. It's a must win. Some would say for Arkansas, if they want to do big things at least this year. Pittman's obviously going to be fired up about it because Arkansas fans starting to get a little impatient with him. So this is actually a big game. This is one of those games that I've become a little bit more nervous about as the season's gone on as a Tennessee fan. I will be at this game, heading out tomorrow morning. Going to go up there, and man, I'm excited. I'm excited to see it. It'll be my first Tennessee game in person this year that I'll be going to. So I'm excited for that one. I will be decked out in orange.
There you go.
But I am taking Tennessee in this one.
Yeah, you got any feeling they're going to cover that? It's a 13.5 point. So Tennessee is 13.5 point favorites. You feel like they're going to cover that one, or
I cannot speak on the spread. I don't want to go that far because I'm really nervous about this one.
okay? All right, I'm not gonna press you too much on it.
We can cover. I do believe we can, but there is a world, a very very real world where we don't.
Well, Taylor Green, he's going to present some difficulties. I think he's going to make some plays. Overall, I just don't think that Arkansas is going to have on the defensive side of the ball what they need to be able to slow down that Tennessee offense and that rushing attack. Which I mean, we saw they even came in and gashed a defense as good as Oklahoma's. So if you're able to do that to Oklahoma in their stadium, I think you're going to be able to score some points against Arkansas. And I think Taylor Green will make some plays, but I see this playing out somewhere in a 35-ish, 38-ish to more like a 20-ish, if that makes sense. So 38 to 20, something along those lines.
Yeah, and
it's how I would see it playing out.
Yeah, and I say that I don't want to take the Vols to cover, but there's also I say there's a real world where they don't. There's also a real world where this could end up like the Tennessee NC State game, right? Yeah. If we come out firing on all cylinders, but we'll see. But I am taking Tennessee, whether it be close or not.
Yeah, give me Tennessee as well. I'm gonna join you on that one. So we'll go ahead. Any other thoughts on that one? Any other?
Nope. I'll be able to have plenty after the game though.
Cool. All right, so we'll go ahead and dive in. Mizzou versus A&M. Missouri going to College Station, take on the Aggies. Who you got in this one, Monty?
So this one, A&M's favored, which I mean, when you have a stadium like Cal Stadium, and they're number 20, well, they're tied with somebody at 25, UNLV, I think. So they're technically ranked, technically not.
Yeah.
But they got a pretty good. They have talent. They do have talent. But I'm taking Mizzou. I think Mizzou's, with the question marks that have been surrounding them, especially with that Vandy game that they had. I think this is the game that their roster really shines. I think that this is the one that they're tired of the people talking about them. I think this is when they go in and they beat the Aggies in Kyle Field.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to disagree here. I've been lower on Mizzou than most people. I get that. I don't know. Like I said, I don't think they're going to be the same team that they were last year. I think this has the this has the potential to present them with some difficulties. I think A&M has a very good defense. I think they've kind of figured out what a lot of teams have is, they're, Marcel Reed, who's probably going to be starting for them. He hasn't shown a, tendency to give the ball away. So you're able to, can't really bank on turnovers there. So I think A&M can maybe run the football with Marcel Reed, and probably pretty well control this game, limit Missouri's opportunities, and I think A&M with the home field advantage. Give me the Aggies here.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say one more thing about the reason why I'm taking Mizzou is, so like Bama, Mizzou's weakness is in the secondary. I just don't think A&M with their quarterback issues. They can run the ball, but Mizzou's strength is their D-line, and I just don't think A&M's got the downfield threats that they need to take advantage of that secondary, and I think Mizzou's offense is too good. Talent-wise, I mean, if Luther Burden gets like 10 to 15 receptions, this thing could get out of hand. So
Yeah. Which, I mean, he showed up big. I believe it was in which game did he show up big in? Was it Boston College? But he's been from the other.
Yeah, he played pretty well that game.
Yeah, their other 3 games, he's been pretty well absent. I mean, he didn't have much going on against Buffalo or Murray State, and they just got taken to overtime by Vanderbilt. So the better teams that Mizzou's faced this year, the more that they have struggled. I think A&M's going to be definitely the most talented team they've played so far, and I think A&M on defense is going to be able to probably stress them out a little more.
It's probably the most talented team they're going to play all season, but
they still got to play Bama and OU. So Missouri does. Yeah, Missouri has Alabama and OU on the schedule this year.
Well, OU doesn't count. No, I'm just kidding.
This guy. All right. So rolling on, we got moving on. We got Michigan.
I guess most talented.
Yeah, we got Michigan at Washington. Washington's actually favored in this game by 2.5. And me personally, when I'm looking at it, I couldn't figure out why Washington is favored. I mean, I know they've lost 2 close games. Michigan, they did lose the one. They did lose the one.
I just think there's so many question marks surrounding Michigan, but maybe that's why. I don't know.
Maybe there is, but I mean, there's one thing Michigan has. They can run the football and they can play defense. That travels.
Right.
I think they're gonna win the offensive and defensive lines here, and I think Michigan is just. I mean, to be fair, I don't think Washington. They haven't been blowing teams out of the water with their offense like they were last year with Michael Penix, and their offense. It scored 35 on.
Well, they lost damn near everybody.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying but what I'm saying is like the offense hasn't been extremely explosive. They scored 35 on Weber State, 30 on Eastern Michigan, 19 when they lost to Washington State at home. They scored 24 on Northwestern, 18 against Rutgers. I mean, I don't see Washington being able to score over 20 on Michigan in this game, and I think Michigan with a running game, they can score at least 20 points. So how the math isn't mathing to me. Maybe I'm missing something, but give me Michigan here.
Yeah, no, I'm taking the Wolverines as well. I just don't see Washington. They're going to try to build this game up because it was the last year's national championship game, and nothing against Washington or anything. I just, like I said, they lost everybody, including their whole coaching staff. And Michigan is still a good team, right? They turned around and they beat a really good USC team this year. And for me, it's like when Washington, if you're Washington and you're losing the Apple Cup at home, when you're supposed to be this, they claim this home environment that Washington has and how loyal their fans are, but you're going to lose the Apple Cup at home. And then you got Michigan coming to town, and you think I'm going to believe that you're going to beat them? No, I'm taking Michigan.
Yeah, maybe the experts know something we don't on this one, but hey, if Michigan wins this game, I guess we can come back and just say, hey, maybe the experts don't know ball as well as we do. We'll just go ahead and claim that one.
And if Washington somehow pulls this one off, I'll be the first to admit that I was wrong. But
I'll own that one. But yeah, give me Michigan here. I just don't understand the probability predictors. Everything's favoring Washington here, and I don't see it when I'm looking at the 2 teams. So next one we got on the lineup, we got Ole Miss versus South Carolina. Monty, who you got taking this one? Pretty exciting matchup. Ole Miss coming off their first loss of the season. What do you think here?
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty high on South Carolina all year. Obviously, Ole Miss having a pretty rough outing against Kentucky this past week. You see all these stats on Instagram and Twitter or X and all that. showing Ole Miss is the highest yards per game, best offense in the country, highest points per game, this and that. Um, and then they turn around and they lay an egg against Kentucky. Not a zero, but they lay an egg in the sense of what they are used to.
I get you.
And it was their first SEC game this season, and you had all the people saying, well, they haven't really played anybody, so wait till they do that. Then they do that, and they lose to a Kentucky team. And then South Carolina, on the other hand, right, they lose to LSU at home 36-33, a good LSU team, right? I'm going with Ole Miss.
Sounds like you almost talked yourself into South Carolina there for a second.
Yeah, and I actually had initially picked them, but I just think with how good Ole Miss is, and they don't get talked about enough because of Ole Miss's offense, but how good Ole Miss's D-line is and their defense. And like South Carolina's got their quarterback coming back too, which is big. That might play a factor, but man, I think that if you go shootout between Jackson Dart and South Carolina's offense, man, I just don't see Ole Miss losing this game. I don't see Lane Kiffin losing this game, especially after that. And plus, Kentucky. So you got Georgia. Georgia scores 34 on a good Clemson team, and then Kentucky holds them to 13 points. Kentucky's got a freaking stout defense, so you don't take too much away from Ole Miss. I'm concerned as a Tennessee fan for Kentucky when Kentucky comes to town. So yeah, I don't want to take anything away from Ole Miss yet. So I am going with the Rebels on this one. Now, if they don't do it this week, then you start asking those questions like, hey, were all those big numbers at the beginning of the year? Was that because they weren't playing anybody? But for now, I'm going with Ole Miss.
Well, yeah, I mean that was the thing is the first team that before Kentucky, Ole Miss had beaten Furman, FCS team, Middle Tennessee, who's 1-4, Wake Forest, who's 1-3, and Georgia Southern, who's 3-2. And then they finally go in and play Kentucky and they lose at home.
There's some question marks for sure. But and I think this game will be a real tell.
And I mean, whenever you're looking at it, you did mention how good the Kentucky defense is. Well, this South Carolina team scored 31 on that Kentucky defense this year.
Absolutely.
I think it's that might be the most points that Kentucky defense has given up this year.
Yes, it is.
And so for this one with Lenore Sellers coming back, South Carolina's quarterback, I got to go with South Carolina at home here. I know they're Ole Miss is favored by 9.5 in this one. I
wouldn't take that.
No, I think it's going to be closer than that, and I think South Carolina is going to give them a game, and I think they're going to come out with a win here. Give me South Carolina close. I think maybe
we got two disagreements this week.
Oh, do we? All right,
yeah.
So so I got South Carolina in this one. Give me the Gamecocks to get the win versus Ole Miss at home. Which, man, that spells 2 losses for Ole Miss team that comes in with the expectations they have. That there would be some conversations being had next week, but we can discuss that on next week's episode should it happen. We'll see what happens there. Next game on the slot, we got SMU versus Louisville. Man, they just keep wanting me to have to say that team's name. So, yeah. SMU versus Louisville at home. Who you got in this one? Is this our other disagreement?
No. You picked South Carolina. I picked Ole Miss. And then you picked A&M. I picked Mizzou.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
No, I got Louisville in this one. I had made this note earlier. I didn't mention it. Talking about Louisville Notre Dame game. I still think Louisville's a solid team. I still think Louisville has a chance of being there at the end for the ACC championship. So it is a conference game to SMU at Louisville. I think that Louisville is just going to be too fast for SMU. I think that this is going to be kind of SMU's like, hello, welcome to the ACC, which you don't hear a lot of people say. But
SMU gave Florida State one last week, so
yeah, but that's as we found out, that's not saying a whole lot. So
yeah,
no, I mean SMU is a good team. This could kind of be a pick'em. I don't know what's the spread on this one.
The spread is 7. Louisville's favored by 7.
Louisville, yeah. See, touchdown. Yeah, I mean, yeah, touchdown spread. That's a. It could be a pick 'em. It could be with how SMU played last week. But I mean, when you see how Louisville was able to manage the game against Notre Dame, I think Louisville's a really good team, and I think that's why I'm going to go with them. But I think this game could go either way, but I'm going with Louisville. I think they're too fast.
Yeah, I think Louisville's they've shown an ability to throw the ball, get a lot of passing yards, regardless of who they're playing. And I don't think they've done some good things in the rushing attack, but I don't think they've shown that same ability, if that makes sense, as far as the passing game. Jennings Kevin Jennings is still starting for them, which makes one of my takes look terrible with Preston Stone at the beginning of the season. But hey, I'll go ahead and own that one. Hey, sorry, I thought Preston Stone. I think he's probably going to transfer out of there this year, so we'll see where he ends up and what his career ends up looking like. But with that being said, I just don't think the SMU defense is going to. I mean, they're 83rd in the nation as far as passing defense, coming against the 22nd passing defense for Louisville, or passing offense for Louisville. I think that's going to be a place where they struggle. Rushing attacks, I think they're pretty similar. SMU's, they got the 17th rushing offense to Louisville's 44th rushing, or 17th rushing defense to Louisville's 44th rushing offense. SMU is the 19th rushing offense. Louisville is the 22nd rushing defense. So, like I said, I think Louisville, I don't think they're going to beat themselves. They're not going to commit too many penalties. I don't think they're going to turn the ball over. So give me Louisville to win the game here at home.
I agree.
All right, so we'll roll on, man. That's all the predictions we got. Just a little recap. Tennessee versus Arkansas. We're both going with Tennessee here. Mizzou versus A&M. Monty's taking Mizzou. I'm going with the Aggies. Michigan and Washington. We're both going Michigan there. Ole Miss versus South Carolina. Monty's taking the Rebels. I'm going to go with the Gamecocks, South Carolina Gamecocks in that one, and then we're both taking Louisville versus SMU. So, Monty, let's go ahead and get into our dub and duds of the week. We always start negative first, so who do you have as your dud of the week?
So I had mentioned this earlier. So my dud of the week is going to be the refs and I don't like talking about, refereeing too much. Football's football, and bad calls are called and good calls are called. But with that being said, Virginia Tech at Miami, do I believe it was a catch? Not really. But the problem is that they called it one, reviewed it, and then without clear and concise evidence, because they took 5 minutes to look at it. If you have to take 5 minutes to look at a replay, it's not clear and concise. And then they overturn it to decide the game. It's an unspoken rule as a referee, or unwritten rule, I should say. You don't decide the game. That's why you get, in both college and NFL, you don't call that PI at the end. When they're both fighting with each other at the end of games. Because you don't want to, you're not supposed to control the game. It's supposed to be, you let them play at the end, which obviously as a Hail Mary, they let them play, right?
Normally, yeah. You don't see like a pass interference or anything like that.
Unless it's blatant.
Yeah,
unless they
blatant.
Literally tackle them. But on a Hail Mary, you don't call it because, that's just a big dog pile in the air, which they didn't call anything, which is right. But then there was no possession, no clear possession. When they came down with the ball, they called it a touchdown. Okay. I was happy because I was like, yep, that's Miami, right? And obviously we enjoyed watching the upset. Or thought was an upset. Then they review it, and you're staring at it, and they're going, and the game's over at this point, right? And they're going on and on and on and on for like 5 minutes. You can't tell me if you're reviewing something for 5 minutes that it is clear and concise evidence to overturn a call on the field. And they did, and so the refs took control of that game, and they're my dud, big time losers.
Yeah, my thing about it with this one is, so if you're watching that play out on the field, right, and so pass went up, Miami defender jumps for it, Virginia Tech wide receiver jumps for it, they both come down fighting for it, right, and the Miami defender runs off with the football before any signal's made. He runs out of the end zone. Miami fans are celebrating. They're going crazy. and thinking that they just won the game, and then the ref runs over and says, "No, it's a touchdown, Virginia Tech." I don't understand how you make that call originally on
Well,
the field, because it's like,
and
did he ever have? How can you say he had clear possession of it in your head if you just
well,
watched
no one did.
Yeah, no one had possession.
But and so on top of that, so they both came down with the ball, right? And whatever. Who and I don't think anyone had possession, but the problem is that the Miami player was out of bounds.
Yeah,
On this past Sunday during the Chiefs game, there was a fumble, and Creed Humphrey, the center, Creed Humphrey as an Oklahoma guy,
one of the
recovered
best, best center in football.
Probably he recovered the ball, but the problem is that the Chargers player also was touching the ball, but was out of bounds. So they called the ball out of bounds. There was no fumble recovery, and it was Chargers ball. That is literally what happened at the Miami Virginia Tech game. So it should have been incomplete. Not a pick, not a reception, incomplete. But my issue with it was that not that the call was made a touchdown. The issue is the overturning, because there was no evidence to overturn it, or there wasn't enough evidence. There wasn't clear and concise evidence to overturn the call.
There was nothing clear about that play, regardless.
But
so yeah,
you stick with the play, the call on the field.
As wrong as it may be, I get it.
And they literally decided that outcome, and you're not supposed to as a ref. So
yeah, I get that.
You're dud.
My dud of the week. I got an interesting one for y'all. So I had to go with Nick Saban here. Obviously great, probably one of probably the greatest college football coach of all time. I don't really think it's up to debate at this point. So now he's a game day host. He comes through and he does predictions just like me and Monty do for y'all. Game day does the same kind of thing. It's kind of where we pulled the idea from. Well, this week he had his wife, Miss Terry, on game day alongside him as the game was in Tuscaloosa. And Miss Terry actually kicked his butt in the prediction game. She predicted 7. She went 7 for 2 in her predictions, whereas Nick Saban went 5 for 4. So got to be tough for Nick Saban. She's going to hold that over his head for probably just about as long as she can. I couldn't imagine.
Got to.
Which it just shows, hey, predicting these games, it's tough to do. It is tough to do, even if one of the greatest coaches in college football can go 5 for 4. Hey, it's tough to predict these games and get them right. So Monty, who do you got as your dub of the week, man?
Yeah, so I don't know if this is like a trend, and I promise to the people listening, we don't really tell each other what we're picking for these. But another piggyback off yours, my dub of the week is going to be Kaylin DeBoer, actually, for his first SEC win against Georgia. I mean, it's not only it's his first SEC win. I mean, it's against Georgia, of all teams, right? Against Kirby Smart, who's supposed to be, with Saban gone,
new
the
king.
Next, yeah, right. The next, the guy to beat, right? And Kaylin DeBoer does it on his first matchup. So, big props to Kaylin DeBoer. And I'm saying that humbly as a Tennessee fan. Alabama's got their next guy, and we're just gonna have to deal with it for 20, 30 more years, I guess. No, huge win for them. Huge win for him. But Alabama and DeBoer, man, they're still on top of the college football world. Some people make the argument, oh, well, he's doing it with Saban's guys. You still got to go out there and play football games and coach football games.
Still got to call the plays. And still got to execute.
And there's still people that followed him to Alabama that are playing. So yeah, I mean, it's impressive what he's doing over there, and the SEC still has Alabama to deal with. Who you got?
So for me, I had to go with UNLV here. Not only do they get their first top 25 ranking, and I don't know, have they? I don't even know. Have they ever been? If it has, it's been a while.
So it's been since like 1977 when they went up to Division I, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So yeah, I had to go with UNLV there. Not only are they coming over, with Matt Sloka. Sloka's his name, right?
Sluka, yeah.
Yeah, Sluka. Him quitting on the team, their starting quarterback quitting on them. They go in and they get a very impressive win over Fresno State, dominated Fresno State, said, hey, man, I understand you quit on us. You wanted more money, whatever the deal is. Here's what we're going to show you is just how replaceable you are. um,
Yep.
yeah, so a
Yep.
statement not to only him, but also, to the college football world. It's like a lot of people, they might have been, not so much, UNLV has gotten a lot of stock bought into them early this season, but you lose your starting quarterback, everybody's like, well, how good really are you? And they showed, hey, no, we're good. We don't really need him. We can still be a top 25 team and a contender for that group of 5 spot. So yeah, I had to go with UNLV this week as the winner of the week. So we'll go ahead, roll on. We'll finish the show just like we always do. Have you came
Man,
up with a hot take for us? What you
I
got?
was gonna say you're gonna hate me, man. I have not been able to think of anything. Because the one thing about about my hot takes is that they need to be hot, but I gotta believe them. I can't just be out here, making hot takes to make hot takes if I don't believe in them, right? I mean, we talked about, Iowa State, right? I made that prediction them win the Big 12. I genuinely believe that, and so I said it, right? Tennessee, I say that they were going to win the national championship this year. It's a very scolding hot take and much harder to do than win a conference, especially like the Big 12. But that's something I do believe that we can do. I thought about saying Ohio State's not gonna finish the season undefeated. I don't believe that. I thought about a couple other things. It's like, man, but I don't believe that. I'm just, so I do not have a hot take this week. Maybe next week I'll try to think of two to come up
Cal?
with. But
What about Cal? Maybe getting an upset over Miami. You got any faith there? Cal's looked pretty good early in the season.
they've looked all right. But I mean, no, I don't. I wouldn't. I don't believe that. I think
Yeah.
Miami's going to do just fine against Cal.
Sorry, y'all.
I could say my hot take is, I believe that the Virginia Tech thing was not a catch, but that's a hot take either way. So
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, there. So, well, yeah. We just want to thank y'all for tuning in, man. Thank y'all for listening to us sit here and talk or ramble on for about an hour and 15 minutes. We're glad to do it for y'all every week, and I know I'm just thankful to have the opportunity to at least talk some college football, get some of my thoughts out. So, Monty, you got anything you want to say on the outro of the show? I know you don't have a hot take for us this week, so what you got for the outro?
yeah, sadly I don't. But it's thank you to everyone who does listen to us. I want to remind everyone that we do this more as a conversational tone, so I do hope that people like that. So it's more raw than anything than probably what most people are used to, like pulling up stats as we go, getting some stats wrong, because it was always supposed to be conversational, just two guys spitballing about college football. So hopefully people don't mind that and prefer that maybe. Because it's just like sitting at a bar stool at a bar, right? Like you're trying to pull stats out of your ass, and sometimes you get it wrong. But then that's why we got these computers here. So yeah, we appreciate
Yeah.
everyone that listens, and hopefully they like the conversational tone we got going.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, if there's anything y'all want added to the show, topics y'all want us to cover, anything y'all feel like y'all would like more out of the show, please reach out to us. Let us know. Follow the show on any social media platform. We're on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter or X, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for those of you that listen on the audio version. There's also a YouTube show that goes along with it. It's a video version. So whichever one y'all prefer, follow the show there. As always, man, thank y'all for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next week on the Monty and Murdy College Football Show. Peace.